So today we have a really special guest. I am blessed to call him a good friend. We have the one and only Pat Wu from Wooist.com. So Pat, welcome to the show.
Hey Jeremy, thank you so much for having me today and really excited to be on your show.
So Pat, we were talking beforehand about what we should talk about in this show, and we spat around a few ideas, but there's something that really caught my eye, or actually really caught my ear rather. And you mentioned you had a three-step, three-phase process of seduction. And I know when guys, when they go into these podcasts, they're just like, oh my God, like, give me that. So can you elaborate more about what that entails?
Yeah, well, these three phases are more so like three phases of understanding for yourself first. And then later on in the phases, we talk more about you and your dance with women. So the first phase that I want to talk about is being human. Now, when I mean being human, most guys are not looking at what's true already before anything that has an opinion. And what I mean by that is if you look at gravity, if I jump up, I'm always going to fall down, right? Well, I'm kind of saying, hey, look at what a human being consists of first before you look into your unique personality, right? So as in, can you see that you as a human being think things sometimes? Like we all do that, right? So notice that. Now the second phase that I want to talk about is the being you phase, which is your uniqueness, which is a lot of what a lot of coaches talk about, like being unique, being you. What's special about that specific thing about you over anyone else? And then the last phase, which is the wooing phase, which is what everyone always likes to talk about, like how do I create a first impression? How do I talk to someone? How do I say these things to seduce her? And to me, you can call this three-phase seduction or whatever you want to call it. When it comes from the beginning, which is the human part, to the being yourself part, to the wooing part, when you start from that human side of things, all of a sudden you're starting from the inside to the out. So everything that you're doing is being congruent when you're connecting with women. And that's something that most guys that want to be good with women don't really do. They're just kind of putting on this other personality when they want to talk to women. Now, this was definitely me. I'm not sure about you, Jeremy, but...
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, I'm equally guilty, but...
Yeah. Now, I remember when I was really, really young, and when I mean really young, I was like 20 years old. I remember when I started, I still hadn't gone on a date yet, and I was thinking, okay, well, how do I meet women? Because it hasn't worked out for myself yet, And if I've tried this thing that women kept saying would work, which was be myself, well, why haven't I gotten a girlfriend in the last 20 years of my life? And then later, like, why didn't, for some people, it's like, why haven't I got a girlfriend? Or why haven't I met lovely women 30 years of my life, or 40 or 50 years? But I've been doing this being myself thing, and women keep telling me. But what I realize that most people don't really understand what women mean by that, number one. And what they do next is they typically look for, what are the successful, attractive personality types doing? And so they become this other person, and they say the same things that they're saying, instead of what they would rather say in the moment. So what happens is that these guys end up becoming like, they end up becoming, you can call it incongruent with who they already are. Now, I remember this one time, I went to this one club, and I remember thinking, I was like, okay, you know what? I read in this book that I should do this thing called being cocky and funny. and
no, David DeAngelo,
yeah.
Double Your Dating, yeah.
And I remember he said, always be cocky and funny. So I'm like, okay, maybe if successful people do this, then maybe that's what I'll do too. So I remember going into this club by myself, and I remember seeing these lovely women dancing around, and then I was like, okay, when am I going to use cocky and funny line, when I'm going to use it. And I kept thinking in my head, okay, cocky and funny, cocky and funny. And then I saw this one woman standing in the middle of the dance floor, and I remember kind of like circling around her for like 20 minutes,
like a vulture.
like a vulture.
I used to do that too, and I feel like, side note, do you ever feel like women have like this like intuitive sense when a guy's kind of hovering around
Oh
her?
yeah.
Because
Oh
I'm
man,
like,
yeah.
I was like, she's walking faster, I gotta walk faster and cut her off in some non-creepy way, and then you get in your own head. But so you're around this woman, this girl that caught your eye, this woman that caught your eye,
Yeah.
and you were kind of like circling around, and
Yeah. And then I started putting on this personality. It was no longer me. It's like, okay, I'm gonna put on this cool guy personality now. We'll eliminate Patrick from the equation, because Patrick, well, I mean, that guy is not gonna work. His personality won't work in this situation. So I started saying these lines, and these I was saying things like, "Hey, you're really cute. Why haven't you talked to me yet?" You know, like I was like trying to be super cool, and she kind of like laughed, and I was like, "Oh my god, it worked!" But
the secret has been revealed.
Yeah. But I mean, did she ever call me back? No, she didn't call me back. So this kind of stuff, when you're starting from, when you focus all your energy from like, you know, using the wooing stuff, which is like, okay, how do I talk to people? How do I say these lines? How do I, you know, arouse women? That stuff works in the right moments. Like I think everything works in the right moments, but you have to kind of understand where it's kind of coming from. Is it coming from you telling you to say this in the very moment, or are you kind of just spitting these things out because you heard them from a book, or you heard them from a successful dating personality or something like that?
So I do want to ask you that, because we were mentioning it, and I think that's actually probably what a lot of guys, that they're hearing that, they're like, okay, we have to know like how to speak and do these things at the right moment, because if we think about it logically, yeah, it makes sense, right? Because if you do the same shit all the time in different scenarios, it might not work out. Especially for Asian guys, you know, sometimes we're more logical, so we're thinking, yeah, that makes sense because things are different, right?
Yeah.
But I think they might be thinking, well, how do I develop that intuition and that wisdom to know what to do and what to say? And let's imagine this guy, he's a beginner, or maybe he's read. Let's be honest. For me, I was master of hoarding pickup stuff. I had probably 100+ gigabytes, not all properly downloaded. Don't tell anyone that. But I was just, I know all the seduction techniques, and it's just like, but I don't know when to do what. And it just feels like they're also scared that they do something that might be really creepy. And they're just like, well, then Patrick and Jeremy told me to tap into that ability to be versatile. But I don't know how to do that. Like, what advice would you give to them?
Well, I think I'll first start off with saying, now I understand why someone would want that linear approach, right? Well, kind of like let's say you go to a salsa class, right? You go to a salsa class, they teach you these basic steps, and they put on a very specific song, right? Now, what would happen is you practice the song, you practice the moves, you practice the routine of the salsa dance, and you could practice 100 times and you're like, I got it down to a T. It's amazing. Now, what happens when there's a different song? What happens when you have a different partner all of a sudden? Now, everything that you had like meticulously planned out in this linear fashion, all of a sudden is not as useful, right? So this is what a lot of people do. They're like, I'm gonna say this line, and then she's gonna say this, and then she's gonna say this, and I'm gonna say this. But that rarely happens that we know exactly what's gonna happen every time. Like, because conversations with people, as human beings, we are kind of all over the place a lot of times. We're not gonna be predictable all the time. Yeah. So when you can handle the unpredictability of things, then all of a sudden you're going to be able to adapt with women, or adapt in different situations more. And when you're able to do that, you're going to always kind of say more or less the right things. And the second part of that question was, how do you develop a stronger intuition? Well, the short answer is you are engaged connecting with women a lot. That's kind of the short answer.
That's true.
When you talk to a lot of women, you kind of eventually get a feel, oh, okay, this woman is saying that she hates me, but she kind of looks like she likes me, and she's not running away,
Yeah.
and she's not slapping me in the face or WWF throwing me down. So I think that's okay. Okay. So maybe this means when she says it in this way, maybe that's really like doesn't really mean that she hates me.
Mhm.
So that's one thing. Number one, that's very useful. Talk to women. Go figure, right?
Get the experience, right? Like get actual experience instead of reading.
Yeah. So get actual experience of connecting with women. And number two, I would say follow the feeling. So a lot of people they'll hear something. And then they'll hear a really cool technique. Like for instance, what I heard was be cocky and funny, right? So if I were really really nervous in my head and I was starting to like kind of freak out and kind of feel weird and I know it's not the right thing to do in that particular moment and I'm still doing it anyways, you're gonna start to notice, oh, it didn't really that cocky and funny moment didn't really work out, that moment probably wasn't right for it because you kind of felt in your body like, oh, that probably isn't the right time. Because as a human being, you actually have this thing where you just kind of have this built-in logic system where like, oh, what this kind of makes sense. I mean, it just makes sense that I should say it here. And it's all stemming from, do you have a good feeling or not? So when you do have that good feeling, all of a sudden, say more of that. You're getting like the green light. Oh, hey, say it. When you're kind of like, when you're getting that feeling where you're kind of slumping down in your chair, you're like, oh no, I don't know if I should say this or not. Like, oh, and you still say it anyways. It's probably not going to go as well.
Yeah, I have a funny story behind that. Okay, this is the first time I admitted this on my public channels. And I want to tell you this too. This is probably the first time you're hearing it, Pat. But I want to say what Pat is saying is spot on. Because I remember everyone has that sense of intuition. Like we're built biologically to actually sense it. And I know some people feel like maybe their social intuition is a little bit off. Or you feel like you can't trust yourself yet.
Yeah.
I totally get that. But I really do believe beyond all the noise and conditioning that's happened throughout the years for you, you still know intuitively. Because I remember in college, and here's the cringe-worthy story, and whoever hears this might be laughing their ass off when they hear it. But there was this beautiful girl by my standards in college. She was half Japanese, half white. I love Hapa girls, and she was living in the same apartment complex as me, right? And this is when I first like learned pickup. And remember Mystery, how like back in the day he like really like routines and he had like different lines you could say. So I start talking to her and I guessed her ethnicity correctly, right? And she's like, oh my God, no one's ever guessed it, right? And she's like giving me that, like, who are you look, right? So I'm like, I'm a motherfucking pimp. That's who I am.
Oh.
And then I'm like, okay, so next thing, this will get her. I'm going to use the best pickup artist line from Mystery. And you know what I said? Oh my God, like I'm even feeling embarrassed, like remembering it. There's still some shame around it. I said, you have nice eyes. Can I touch them? And she's like, what? And then like she like recoiled. And the thing about it is, man, I'm actually just going back to that place right now. But the thing about it is, before I said that, I had felt like I was forcing it. I had felt this weird like, no, Jeremy, what the fuck is you doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't listen to it. And even then, when I was absolutely clueless with women, deep down, I still kind of knew that was the wrong thing to try to force.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what say you?
Yeah. So a lot of times, what people will do is like something will go really well, right? Like they're having a great conversation with someone, and all of a sudden, like they start to have this thought of, oh shoot, it's going really really well. Like I better not mess this up. I better have. What was that line that I heard? And all of a sudden they recall back to something that they read in a book, or they saw in a movie, or they saw in some kind of YouTube video. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I should be, let's say for instance, I should be more direct. And then while everything's going well, they're like, okay, I remember, I'll be more direct. And already they're getting into their heads of what they have to do now in order to be, great with women. And then they would start to becoming more direct to these women. And they're like, oh, and all of a sudden what they're losing is that nice feeling now. Because in the beginning they had a great feeling, and now all of a sudden you're forcing this thing on, and it's becoming, and now the whole entire dynamic of you two is changing. I remember I was at this bar this one time, and when I was at this bar, I was talking to this woman, and we were having a great time. We were laughing, and then I remember in that very moment, I was thinking, oh, what did I read in this like magazine? And in the magazine, it said something along the lines of, you should say this to a woman. You should say, like, wow, you are so incredible. You're too much for me. I'm only one man. And I had to say something along the lines of that. Wow, okay. Like I'm like, wow, you're such an incredible woman. Oh my gosh, I can't handle that. I'm only one man. Mm-hmm. And then I remember she stopped and she said, Patrick, it seemed like we were having such a great time all up until that very moment where you used that line. Did you read that from some kind of magazine or something? I'm like, yes, I did, actually.
That's good that you're hearing it.
Oh, yeah. I was like, I totally did. It's like, yeah, I could kind of feel like it was going fantastic, and all of a sudden it just felt rehearsed and weird. And yeah, it didn't really work that well. And she just kind of walked away.
Oh my God.
and I was like, wow, okay. And I remember I had a glimpse into thinking, okay, perhaps maybe this thing where this, if I follow my nice feeling, it might be a good place to follow. And I remember this one time when I was like practicing. I was practicing giving compliments this one time. So I was like, okay, I got to be good at giving compliments. So I remember I just started telling like every woman, it's like, hey, you know what? Wow, look at you. You're so cute. And I kept practicing this, right? Mm-hmm. So I remember like I just walked around and I went up to this woman, and I said, wow, look, you're so cute. And then later she kind of looked at me for a second and she said, I don't really believe you. And later I thought for 1 second, I was like, I don't really believe I told her, I don't really believe myself too. I'm sorry about that.
I think the awesome part of these stories is actually the point that you're willing to be honest. And I'm pretty sure that actually might be a good segue to the next point. How important is this whole sense of speaking your truth, speaking from your heart, from that good feeling? Because the thing I like, and I think a lot of guys have heard this in recent years, the value of honesty. And I feel like a lot of the old pickup stuff has been predicated on, let's put it in your wooing phase, right? But it's usually predicated on this performance. Trying to execute. It's almost like it is a performance, right? You're trying to execute like some complicated maneuver that will land her in the bedroom with you or on a date. And for you, I love the part where you're just like, actually, I don't believe in myself, right? Like, can you tell me more about how honesty has helped you?
I might be going against a lot of people on this, because a lot of people preach this idea that you have to kind of speak your truth and be honest like all the time. And I actually don't 100% agree with that. Now, what I was saying, just like any technique, just like anything we were talking about, I think there is a time and place to be extremely honest and truthful. And sometimes, I think sometimes white lies are fine. Like, for instance, I'll lie to this girl and say, oh my gosh, I got to go to the bathroom. I can't be around you anymore. Like that's not being truthful. That's just being very playful in that moment. So what to me matters even more is, what does this moment call for? And some moments, to be truthful and honest and speaking your truth is important. And other moments, it might not be. But in general, and I'm going to say in general, I'm going to try to speak my mind as frequently as I can.